This episode of Everly Heights Tales is brought to you by Envato Elements. If you're creative like me, you don't necessarily have the time or the talent to create everything you need. With Envato Elements, you can download unlimited creative assets all in one place. Where do you think I got a lot of the sound effects in this episode? Sign up for a low-cost annual plan today at everlyheights.tv/Envato. That's ENVATO.
Saw a broken clock on the sidewalk. The hands were moving backward. A theater kid's flashlight cast a shadow at my feet. An old actor told me once that time is on your side. But every time I try to run, this town pulls me back inside. This town has a gravity that rips you at your seams. It's a half-remembered longing for a place you've never been. You could always leave tonight, but the road's just bends right back, 'cause every precious thing you cherished hasn't changed since you left.
The lights dim and our play begins. Enjoy Everly Heights, a local's guide. And stick around after the show for a little something extra.
This town has a gravity that pulls you by your jeans. It's a half-remembered feeling of some place you've always been. You can try to drive away, but the roads turn you around, 'cause every exit starts a ticking clock till the magnet pulls you back.
Hey guys! So, Everly Heights, home of the arts, land of the lost, and according to my viral video, the 7th most cursed town in Ohio. Welcome to my town, and my tour. I'm Louie Loop, Everly Heights' 3rd biggest YouTuber, and your personal guide through the strange, the sweet, and the sometimes suck of our little corner of hell, Ohio. Let's kick things off at the best pizza joint in town, Square's Pizza. Why is it called that? Well, they cut their pizza into square slices. No duh, right? But why is the crust always burnt? It's just a Ohio Valley-style pizza tradition.
The mountains looking on.
See that kid behind the counter reading a Shakespeare play? That's Greg. If he delivers a soliloquy to you when he's handing you a calzone, just clap. It's polite.
What dost thou require of me?
2 square slices, please. One for me and one for my guest. Don't worry, I'm buying. Just call it a little Everly Heights hospitality.
Hither yon, thy pizza waits upon yonder sill.
Bravo, Greg, bravo! It's good to encourage artists, no matter how bad they are. Come on, we can eat these squares on the way, too. This is Franklin W. Dixon Memorial Library. Named after the quote-unquote author of The Hardy Boys. Seriously, he wasn't even a real guy. Just a pen name for a sweatshop, really. If you want to blame anybody for that blunder, blame Everly Heights' homegrown boy detective, Danny Chance. He put this town on the map back in the 90s. Marilyn Voss Savant even interviewed him for Parade magazine. Sadly, he hasn't done much since. The city built the library to cash in on the whole kid detective thing, but they didn't research the name before they paid for the sign. Sounds impressive, though. Okay, next stop, Dixon Park. Pardon my language, but this is where it all went to hell. Continuing the inaccurate but well-intentioned naming trend, Dixon Park, right outside the library, was the site of an embarrassing moment in Everly Heights history. A double booking. On the one side, the nerds attending the 1999 Cyber World's Fair to geek out about the burgeoning World Wide Web and whatnot. On the other side of the park, the Tri-State Country Jamboree, filled to the brim with self-proclaimed rednecks from the far reaches of Ohio and West Virginia, ready to tear it up. Much like hard drives and cheap beer, the two sides didn't mix and caused a massive social explosion. Yep, Everly Heights had a literal culture war before it was cool. Sadly, nobody won in the end. Oh, that statue with the kid looking for his dad? He disappeared from the park back in 1994. After 2 years, they gave up and gave the parents $1,000 and a statue to remember him. Weird thing was, the kid showed up 4 months later in the freezer of the old Chi-Chi's, mumbling something about that crappy Kevin Costner movie Waterworld. Even though the kid came back, he never really came back, if you catch my drift. He OD'd last winter, right under the statue. The paramedics cleared his body away before morning, but the statue's still there. A monument to who he was, the whisper of who he could have become. Makes you think, doesn't it? What could have been if you made different choices? Man, this tunnel's spooky, right? It runs from South Everly Heights near the trailer park straight through a mountain right into downtown near the hospital. Locals call it the Everly Tunnel, but it was built as part of the old Hempfield line back when Everly Heights was still the gateway to the west side of Ohio. Winter is brutal here. During the Depression, hobos used to curl up in the tunnel to keep warm. But there's a reason they didn't always make it out. It's narrow, too narrow for a train and a person side by side. That's why they carve these little recesses into the walls every 30 feet. Escape alcoves, you know? But you gotta be awake to use them. Gotta hear the train a-comin', you know, to quote Mr. Cash. A lot of folks didn't see it a-comin'. That soot you see on the walls, that's not just engine smoke. Well, it is, but the soot is also covering up a whole lot of blood. They say one of the ghosts that haunts this place is a guy who never made it into one of those alcoves before the midnight train came through. For good reason. The legend goes that you can still see the spirit of Harlan Special, murdered right near the tunnel entrance in 1867 by Louie Duplass. Louie pushed old Harlan on the tracks. They say his spirit wanders the tunnel at night, trying to catch the last train home. Folks talk about seeing shadows in here, hearing violent screams, seeing green slime dripping from the walls, even when it hasn't rained in weeks. And get this, a cemetery used to sit up on that hill above us. They moved it years ago, but not all the bodies made the move. Come on, we don't want to end up another dark splotch on the wall, right? Let's get out of here, fast. This is the coffee shop, spelt with a K, which I've heard was less about style and more about an owner who didn't get good grades in English. You're not officially a resident of Everly Heights until you've hung out at the coffee shop for an afternoon. So much local flavor. Even if the coffee isn't local, they ship it in from Cleveland.
Didn't expect to see you here on a weekday, son. Shouldn't you be practicing your JavaScript?
Hey, Pops. This is Steve Loop, my dad. What are you doing here, Dad?
Just picking up a pound of Highlander grog. And who's your friend here?
Oh, nobody. I'm giving one of my patented a loop around Everly Heights tours.
Awesome. Totally awesome. Where are you two off to next?
Miller's Leap.
Oh, that's a good one. Say hi to the house for me. All right. I'll let you get back to it, Louie. You watch Louie, okay? He's got a good heart, but his head's in the clouds, which means you should mind your P's and Q's.
Gee, thanks, Dad.
Love you, son.
Welcome to Miller's Leap. We used to live in that crappy blue house over there by the Windmill Bar. Anywho, this is a pretty important landmark in Everly Heights lore. The site of Miller's famous Leap of Faith. They did a segment on the History Channel about it about 10 years ago, if you caught it. Here, in 1782, General George Miller found himself trapped outside Fort Riding's walls when a squad of Shawnee attacked. Left with no other option, General Miller jumped his horse over the impossibly steep hill. Really steep. Almost a wall, really. You couldn't walk down that, right? General Miller rode his faithful steed, Millman, straight down it, shooting at the Shawnee behind him as he went, of course. Despite General Miller's daring leap of faith, more Shawnee were waiting for him at the bottom of the hill. Right down there, by the road. You see the statue? That's where they landed. If you look close, it's like the horse's face looks kind of smug. Like he knew it was dumb from the start. Don't feel too bad for General Miller, though. That guy spent a decade following the Ohio River, killing every Shawnee he found. What I'm saying is, he had it coming. This is the infamous walking bridge that runs over the creek, connecting the row of shops over here to the little neighborhood over there. You won't see a label for the walking bridge on any map or a sign marking it. Locals just know, especially the high school kids who like to party there at night. Local legends say the moment you set foot on the bridge, you're outside of city limits, and the law doesn't count anymore. You could rob a guy, drop some acid, or stretch your artistic muscles to paint graffiti on the underside of the bridge, and technically, you're in a legal gray zone. Not sure if that's true, but I will say my first kiss happened here. So did my first heartbreak, but that's another story for another time. So, you know, the walking bridge is a place where life happens. Here's a weird one. The old Chi-Chi's. This used to be the only place in Everly Heights offering fajitas, birthday sombreros, and those wonderfully delicious deep-fried ice cream balls. Why is it closed? Well, The corporation went under back in 2003 after another location in Beaver, Pennsylvania gave hepatitis to half the town. Beaver's not far from here. In fact, the guy who made out with my first girlfriend and made her break up with me was from Beaver. Yeah, Chi-Chi's used to be pretty lit. But now, nothing but busted tile and true crime stories. This is where they found Dick Armstrong, the leader of that nasty bunch of bikers, the Raptors. He was just laying there dead in the parking lot one morning, chowing down on asphalt with a broken neck and lungs that didn't work like they used to. The official cause of death was listed as, quote, drunken shenanigans. But ask anyone who knew Dick Armstrong, and they'll tell you he wasn't the type to risk his own skin. Not even for drunken shenanigans. That's what he had the motorcycle gang for. This is Leroy's pub. It's been here forever. Still open, still grimy, still has a row of most likely not legal poker machines in the back room that pay out if the bartender knows you. Back in the 90s, people used to say this place was a cover for some weird government operation or another. Leroy, the guy this place is named for, passed away about a year ago. His buddy Jim Colvin took the place over for him. Weird guy, that Mr. Colvin. Always looks like he's hiding something. But don't tell him I said that. I don't want to disappear like that kid in Dixon Park. And here's where our tour ends. Cornerstone Theater. Perhaps the most important place in Everly Heights. Yeah, it looks like a church, but inside it's a legit theater. Mr. Special, the guy who runs the place, puts on all sorts of shows. Die Hard the Musical. They did a Mad Magazine adaptation. They even did Doctor Who. It was amazing. They got every doctor involved. It was so cool. I mean, it wasn't the actors. It was people playing the actors. But you know what I mean. It's any kind of act you can think of has been inside this theater. It's amazing. It's a place where theater kids, loners, oddballs, punk rockers, country boys all come together to do something that comes pretty naturally to most people around here. Telling people a fun story. I know. Cornerstone has seen better days. I heard down at Gaston's Diner that they might be shutting the place down. Yeah, Everly Heights isn't what it was back in the 90s. Heck, it isn't even what it was 5 years ago. But living here isn't terrible. Heck, I've learned the sick yo-yo trick here, so it can't be that bad, right? Up and around and over and across and come here and this crisscross applesauce. Walk the dog around the world in 80 days. Doctor Who, the yo-yo trick. Go, TARDIS, go! Ow! Sorry, still working on that one. The point is, much like I do to my yo-yo, Everly Heights has a way of pulling people in and tying them up, you know? People call it the Everly Heights magnet. Once you're here, even if you want to leave, odds are there'll always be something pulling you back. Well, I'm sure you've got places to be, and I have a yo-yo YouTube video to publish. Hey, if you do stick around, keep your eyes open. You've learned a lot about our town today, but Everly Heights always has another tale lurking behind a statue, under a bridge, or somewhere else that nobody's thought to look since around 1994.
Now, the curtain hasn't quite fallen yet. We'll pause to fill you in on another fantastic Everly Heights tale, and then I'll be back to step out from the wings and talk about the story you just heard. See you in a minute. If you liked Mr. Matheson in today's episode, you'll love Mr. Matheson's Arithmetips, a webcomic collection from Everly Heights. Join our earnest hero Bill Matheson as he navigates the complex equations of life, love, and loss, one arithmetip at a time. This collection is a testament to the idea that solving problems doesn't always add up to happiness. Featuring the first 40-ish Mr. Matheson's Arithmetips webcomic strips, this book also contains a peek behind the curtain with me, Bill Meeks, offering up my personal thoughts on the concepts, references, and themes that inspired every strip. Can you really solve love plus family equals happiness? Well, Mr. Matheson's about to find out, whether he likes it or not. Pick up Mr. Matheson's Arithmetips at everlyheights.tv or wherever you get your ebooks such as Amazon and Smashwords, or buy it directly at everlyheights.tv. Thanks for joining us for Everly Heights, a Locals Guide. I'm Bill Meeks. We joined famed Everly Heights yo-yo YouTuber Louie Loop as he took us on a tour around the town. I thought that would be a very appropriate way to start out the episode. Well, the series, really. Now, here at the end of the episode, every episode, I'm going to dig in a little bit on the inspirations, both real world, my life, and external world inspirations for the story. And in this edition, I'm actually going to show you some of the real life locations that inspired various important locations in Everly Heights. Now, it'll be worth checking out the video version of this over on my YouTube channel at Bill Meeks LA, because I actually traveled to Wheeling, the real Everly Heights, last summer and spent about 2 hours wandering around and shooting some very familiar settings to me and hopefully to you as you get to learn the world of Everly Heights. First up, I want to talk a little bit about the coffee shop. That's coffee shop with a K. Now, my coffee shop is based on an actual coffee shop in the real Wheeling, West Virginia, Wheeling Coffee on Washington Avenue. I took a trip there last summer. Let's go check it out. And this is the coffee shop, the setting for a lot of Everly Heights stories, but most specifically, Kids Like Us. A lot takes place here, like this table, for example. This table is where all the kids hang out, the Kids Like Us, and over here is where all the hacky sack kids play hacky sack. Now, I love the coffee shop, especially when I was like 17, 18 years old. It was basically, if there wasn't a local punk show going on, everybody I knew would gather at the coffee shop to drink coffee or Hank's cream soda, as I always like to drink, smoke cigarettes, don't do that anymore, and generally play hacky sack, generally get into trouble. I'm sure you had hangouts like that in your hometown when you were a kid. Tell me about your coffee shop at Bill Meeks at everlyheights.tv. Now, Square's Pizza is based on DeCarlo's Pizza, now Patsy's Pizza. DeCarlo's Pizza is famous in the Valley. Basically, they cook the sauce and the crust together and then put the cheese and the toppings on afterwards. I don't know if it makes the pizza better or not, but it definitely is a very unique flavor, and it really brings out the flavor of the pepperoni. Now, I will say the former DeCarlo's Patsy's Pizza does have a program where you can actually get freeze-dried pizza shipped to your house via UPS. So if you want to try DeCarlo's or Patsy's or Square's Pizza like it is in Everly Heights, you can order it for, I think, about $50 a tray. Okay, now Franklin W. Dixon Memorial Library is based on the Ohio County Public Library in downtown Wheeling. This is a place that was very important to me, both because I was a huge reader of comic books and actual books. But there were times in my life where I didn't have a lot of people, and the best thing I could think to do with my time is go sit in the library and read a bunch of books. There was a little corner, like you'd go in, you'd go right. There was a little corner, like I think they called it the Jazz Cafe or something, with a couple computers, a couple comfy chairs back in the back. I'd go in, drop off my bag, go get a big stack of comic books or actual books, and then just go sit there for 4 or 5 or 6 hours and take in the culture. The train tunnel from our story is based on Tunnel Green in Wheeling. It's a really creepy train tunnel. It runs from South Wheeling all the way up to the old OVMC right below downtown. I think it runs about 2 or 3 miles, and it's basically a tunnel bored through a mountain. So it's very creepy. It can get when you get to the center of it, you can get very concerned because there's no quick way out. There's walls and mountains on either side, and a door all the way down there, and a door all the way behind you. And it gets a little creepy sometimes. McCulloch's Leap in Wheeling is a very famous historic landmark in Wheeling that I actually happened to live across the street from when I was 18 or 19 years old. I lived in a little blue house next to a bar that we called the Windmill because it was a big windmill. But yeah, it's an interesting sort of monument that they have there, and the sign for McCulloch's Leap and everything, because it's like, this was our hero. This was an incredible thing our hero did. He ran his horse down a hill, but he was also hunting Indians at the time, Native Americans, as we would say today. And I think that's just an interesting dichotomy. And you see that all throughout, especially the South these days, where there are these great monuments built to their heroes, but when we look at them with modern sensibilities, they kind of fall apart. There is a weakness in nostalgia because we romanticize things. And then when we actually look at them with our modern eye, maybe there wasn't as much there to be nostalgic about as we thought. Now, the walking bridge is located about a quarter mile away from the coffee shop, which meant when the coffee shop closed, we would generally take the party down to the walking bridge. We'd have whoever in our friend group had, an ID or a brother who could go get them beer or something. We'd send them off on a run. Everyone goes down to the walking bridge, smokes cigarettes, hangs out, talks, all that kind of stuff. I had some of the most profound conversations I've had in my life on that walking bridge. I mean, maybe they felt that way a little bit because I was 18 and, we romanticize a lot when we're 18, but especially with my friend Dave, who the character Benjamin Ainsley in the Everly Heights universe is based on. He was the first person that really made me feel like we were friends. Not just like, oh yeah, we're friends, we're friendly. Like, we talked about the real shit, And it was all on the walking bridge, nursing a couple of cheap 40s. And finally, let's talk about Cornerstone Theater. This is based on my first theater that I ever acted in, Towngate Theater in downtown Wheeling, West Virginia. Well, really, center Wheeling, I guess, technically. And back behind me is Towngate Theater, the inspiration for Cornerstone Theater, where Michael Special works in Very Special and Curtain Call. I did a lot of theater at this place growing up. This is kind of where I got my start doing theater. I got involved because the girl I was seeing at the time was running lights for a show, and she was like, why don't you come down and audition? The show was the Children's Hour, and I got the part of Grocery Boy. Not a lot of parts for teenage guys in the Children's Hour, but I happened to get the part of the Grocery Boy, which was the guy who came in and basically told these two teachers who were being accused of being in a lesbian relationship that, yeah, confirmed, everybody in town hates you. Yeah, it was like a 3-line part, but it was my first part and I was super duper proud of it. But anyway, anytime I write Cornerstone, I picture Towngate in my head. Now, Michael Special, the guy who runs Cornerstone, who you'll meet later, he's more based on my theater professors, but we'll get into that when we get to Welcome Freshmen next week. Now, after I wrote this episode, I realized it was kind of a foreshadowing world-building episode because a lot of the characters and locations that we visit and the characters we talk to throughout this episode do come into play later in the story. In particular, Louie Loop's dad, Steve Loop, he is half of a two-hander later on in the season that I think might be my favorite episode of the season, honestly. It's about a school bully and a school nerd kind of reconciling after 20 or so years. Now, the whole episode is kind of based on a blog post I wrote Everly Heights, a local's guide, over at everlyheights.tv a couple months ago. The link will be in the show notes, but if you want to sort of see these locations that Louie Loop visits throughout the episode, head over to everlyheights.tv. Now, there are a lot of little teasers in this episode that tee up things that we're either going to be addressing later this season or in future seasons. In particular, the story Louie tells in the old Chi-Chi's parking lot about Dick Armstrong teases a project I'm very excited to tackle in season 2 of this podcast, The Last Chance Detective Agency. It's sort of my kid detective past his prime story. And again, we'll be telling it next season. Now, the narrator of this episode, Louie Loop, was voiced by my old friend Samuel Lewis, who played several characters on my previous auto drama, The Fakest, most notably Carl the Assistant. I want to give major props to Sam for playing both Louie and his dad, Steve Loop, in this episode. Now, we'll get to see Sam's portrayal of Steve Loop, or Steve the Geek, as a teenager next week in Welcome Freshmen. Now, in this section, I'm always going to be pointing out other Everly Heights connections to other Everly Heights stories. This episode is pretty much all connections, really. I've mentioned some of them, but some of them I'll keep under my hat for now. Suffice it to say, an episode that introduces you to Everly Heights has a lot of connections to Everly Heights. Now, I've been talking a while here, and I'd like to hear from you. What are some places from your hometown that stayed in your heart after you moved away? Shoot me an email at billmeeks@everlyheights.tv, and I'll share them in a future episode. Speaking of future episodes, that about does it for this one. I want to thank you so much for joining me on the inaugural Everly Heights journey, and we'll be back next week with another great story. Thanks for listening.